Well, welcome back to the county seat. We are talking today in our discussion part about sheriffs. As Rhea alluded to in her story on Post, there is a shortage. This is not a slight shortage, it's a severe shortage of eligible deputies coming out of Post, and there's not a single county across the state that isn't looking for extra help in the Sheriff's Department for deputies. Joining us for discussion about the problems and possibly the solutions from Sevier County, representing the rural counties, Nathan Curtis, the Sheriff of Sevier County, and we have Rosie Rivera, the new Sheriff of Salt Lake County, who didn't have to drive as far but has a very busy schedule. So we'll get right to our conversation and get you guys into your day. Thank you for joining us. So I want to start the conversation by just asking where the shortages come from, because I know that UHP is trying to steal from the county, and I know that Salt Lake City is trying to steal anybody they can from anywhere around the state. And so why did we get in this spot? What happened?
Do you want to go first, or you want me to?
Go ahead.
Okay. I think a lot of it has to do with there's a culture change where people don't want to be police officers anymore. Also, the retirement system changed. So there's not a real incentive when you have to work 25 years and you get less than the person you're working side by side with that was in the retirement, what is it?
The state retirement
Tier
program.
1.
Uh-huh.
So the Tier 1, it's 20 years and you get 50% and it builds up, but you're working right next to somebody else that has to work 25 years.
So I guess that's the question. That was a recent change the legislature went through. That
4 years ago, I believe.
About 4 years ago. Did we make any headway? I know it was a big topic in the legislature to try and get that corrected.
We didn't get anywhere with that. A big part of it, again, is the public opinion of it. When I was hired on over 20 years ago, that was part of the enticement to come into law enforcement is, hey, in 20 years you can retire in place. That's why we're going to pay you only $10 an hour. We're going to pay you less now because you can do that later on. That option was taken away, and so a lot of our officers, you're seeing them not stick around, so we're losing a lot on the upper end. The bottom end is hard to get new people just because of that very reason. The retirement, the pay, the legislature changing different things on us.
So are you actually losing officers that have already gone through Post and been in the field and the retirement changed and they go, oh, forget this?
They can't see themselves working 25 years, you know, for a young person, 25 years is a long time.
Yeah, especially when you hit that 20, particularly in this kind of line of work. I mean, you know, you got to be able to run a mile and a half, and you got to be able to, you know, scale walls and pull yourself over. It's not easy work.
Absolutely, and it's just the day-to-day. And that's why it was set originally at the 20 years. The things you see, the things you deal with every day tends to burn out a lot of people. And so if they get beyond that 20 years, the 25 to the 30 years, you look at a lot of those men and women, some of them are really jaded about how things are done, and they get very burned out, and we don't become as effective when we're that way.
So how do we solve the problem? I mean, we can't just go on stealing from each other I noticed that you guys were kind of like, how many deputies do you have? I'm not going to tell you when we walked in here today. I mean, what do you...
Well, there's some things that we can do. We can try and retain the employees that we have, which is still really tough because the job market is, you know, right now anybody can go out and get a job and make the same as a deputy makes right away. Mm-hmm. So, you know, we will have to start raising our pay more and more, and that's what we've been doing in this crisis is we're all competing and raising our pay to catch up with the next agency. I am going to be taking to the sheriffs a suggestion of maybe hiring officers at a younger age, 18, 19, or 21, but only for jails. Mm-hmm. Not for the law enforcement side, but just to come into the jail. There's some jobs that they could possibly do, but that's a huge change to what we've been doing.
So I guess that begs a question. Why not just wait till they're 21?
Well, if you wait till they're 21, there's this gap of when they get out of high school. Mm-hmm. They have 3 years, but in those 3 years, they either get married, have children, find jobs, or some of them even find themselves in trouble, and then they can't pass a background. So if we can get them right out of high school, military does it all the time, and we train them well, we should be able to have them work in a jail, law enforcement side is always going to take from the jails. We train our people very, very well, and they like that. They like experienced officers to go to the road. So if we can even have them for that 3-year period, that's still going to help us out.
So I guess the background check is kind of a stunner to me. Is that has significantly changed? Are other states lowering their standards?
I don't know what other states are doing. I haven't looked into them. I know other states aren't quite as intense as the state of Utah is in what we will accept for an officers, but I know even in the years that I've been in as sheriff, it has changed the requirements on drug use, things like that. Those things have been, the strings have been loosened a little bit so that we can still allow for that.
So you're saying some of the deputies you hired today couldn't have hired when you got hired?
Most of the ones I've been lucky enough to hire, I've had a couple I've had to turn down that were considered, that years ago we wouldn't have even accepted their application at all.
Do you think part of this is a problem that the perception of law enforcement officers, people still think that it's like a technical school, and training is that it's, you know, like a 6 month of training, and they don't realize that you've got to understand the entire criminal code, you've got to understand Homeland Security, you've got all these different areas of law. I mean, between that and the psychology and the hostage negotiation, I mean, it's tougher being a law enforcement officer now than it's ever been. Do you think that there's a perception that people don't understand the skill set that's required versus what they think the job is?
I think people understand what is required, but I think the attitude towards it, all across the board, everything from our county commissioners, our state legislators, the general median public, have a perception that we're not as important or that it's not as good of a career. So they're not willing to put the money there or the attitude towards it that this is a good career, this is an honorable profession, and we want to have the best people we can.
So at some point that though it's going to implode though, isn't it? Because at some point, if you're losing people to, say, you know, oil field security officers because they can make 60 grand a year and there's no way that a deputy's ever going to make that, and all of a sudden your shortage will continue to grow until you are not down 8 but you're down 25, then people start getting hurt because there's not enough law enforcement. Is that what we're going to have to go to till it changes?
Well, you know, I think that law enforcement will always step up and make sure those communities are safe, but I think the real issue is going to be in the jails. If you can't staff a jail, law enforcement side can't be booking people in. Then what do you do? And, you know, we have a situation right now with Salt Lake County Jail. We're down about 88 right now, deputies trying to hire. And, you know, all the other agencies around us are taking our people, but they don't realize when you do that, it affects you as well, because if we can't have you put people in, then what happens?
I know you're too gracious to say this, but I can say it. So Salt Lake City comes in and they hire away your jail staff. They put them out on the beat. They arrest somebody and they send them to the jail they stole the deputy from, and you got no way to book them. You're having more problems staffing than you are with the total number of beds available? Is that a problem?
We're having more problems right now with staffing, but we are at full capacity. We have been for several years.
So what's your situation like in Richfield?
So I've replaced 1/5 of my office in the last 4 months. We did a hiring back last October. We had 4 applicants. 4 applicants. And only one of them would pass the background in the interview process. Then when we told him how much his paycheck was going to be, he says, that's okay. I'm going to the prison for $3 an hour more.
So you ended up trying to...
I wasn't able to hire anybody because of where we were pay-wise. The other thing to consider, especially when it comes to the jails, when you're that short-staffed, now you're going to be paying overtime to cover that. And when you start paying overtime, that affects her budget, my budget, all of our budgets, and then those guys get burned out as well. Then when you really need them for other things, they're not willing to come in.
So they're basically shot at 15 years instead of 20 or 25. So how do you fix the problem? I mean, that's a serious, and if you have I hate to use magic wand because everybody makes fun of me because I say it too much, but if you could write a prescription There we go, that's a new one. If you could write a prescription to solve the problem, hand it to the governor and the legislature and your county commissioners, what would the prescription be?
I would first start with that retirement system. We have to change something because you can't have people working in the same department side by side with two different benefits. We lose people that way. We lose our tier 2. Also, I do believe that if we take a look at changing the age for the jails, for corrections, that could help. Their pay is always an issue. We're always competing with pay. And, you know, until we figure it out, that's what we're going to have to do, is keep paying and paying more and more money.
Do we have to just find more pay?
Pay is a portion of it. When it becomes to a point where the pay isn't the worry, then it's the work environment. So it's a combination of all of the above, exactly what we've been talking about. It's your work environment, it's your pay, it's when you have people working on a task force or whatever, side by side doing the same job, getting completely different pay. Those things affect it. But also, we need to, and I think Sheriff Rivera is exactly right, we start in the high schools a little bit and we do a law enforcement class. And then all of a sudden they learn that I have to wait 3 years, I have to go do something else in the meantime, and those things happen. So we need to continue that progression all the way from high school, find a way to keep them involved in what they're doing and excited about it, and continue that process. So pay is a big part, retirement is a part, but I think work environment is a big deal, and we need to continue that process.
So there you go. The prescription's been written. All you legislators, you need to pick it up, study it, look at it. Thank you so much for your input today. We are actually going to come back to the county seat in just a minute. We're going to go on the ground in one county to find out how a deputy shortage actually affects their day-to-day operation. Stay with us. We'll be back on the county seat.